Welcome back. The deaths of Michael Brown and Eric Garner have drawn criticism, as you know, across this country. As you know, protesters, both on Staten Island and in Missouri, as well as other parts of the country, they've spoken out against the police officers in both of these related cases, and they've also spoken out against what they call a communication breakdown between the community and the police. However, there was a recent op-ed piece in the Washington Post that gives the other side of the story, says from a police perspective here on arrests that go bad. Now, the officer writes, quote, "Cops are not murderers. No officer goes out into the field wishing to shoot anyone armed or unarmed." Going on to say that if you don't want to get shot, tased, pepper sprayed, struck with a baton, or thrown to the ground, just do what I tell you. Don't argue with me. Don't call me names. Don't tell me that I can't stop you. Don't say I'm a racist pig. Don't threaten that you'll sue me and take away my badge. Most field stops are complete in minutes. How difficult is it to cooperate for that long? All right. With that, and also what we've seen really in the last few weeks in this country, I'm very pleased to bring in our next guest. George Ossipo is a retired homicide detective and former officer with the Mount Vernon Police Force, and is kind enough to join Dominic and I right now. George, thank you very much for a few minutes. I appreciate it. You police the community, a community of color here, and when you see scenes that are playing out both in Missouri and in Staten Island with raised tensions and sometimes even more than that, what is your initial reaction? That this didn't have to be this way, or you saw these kind of scenes play out that stopped before it got to that so many times in your career?
Well, you know, race tensions have been present for a very long time in urban areas, especially, and mostly poverty-stricken areas. So, I mean, that's nothing new to the police. I do believe that a police department is responsible for establishing a good communication, establishing a relationship with the community to avoid these types of problems. One of the things that I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it was the chief of Ferguson PD had said that there had been a disconnect between the community and its police department, okay? Now, if he knew that, okay, I believe that there should have been measures taken to reestablish that, okay? I believe training is key. I believe sensitivity training is key, and I believe if you understand, as a police officer, if you understand not just race and ethnicity, but the different cultural differences, okay, you can adapt better, and you can address a situation that could potentially become a volatile situation a little better.
You saw what that officer wrote in that op-ed piece. He's a member of the LAPD, and he was like, basically, listen, talk to me the right way, show me the proper respect, and we're not going to have a problem right here. And that, when we talked about this last night, Dominic, you had an instant reaction to this. You related the story of your son who suffers from seizures here, and he was put face down by the cops in that situation. And you had a problem with what that officer had to say.
Well, I did, Richard, because, see, the way you're approaching us now, I mean, it's obvious that you've been on the job a long time. We know you're retired now and doing private investigations. But it just seems like when it comes to the communities of color, it's just like there's a respect problem, perhaps on both sides. But the way the community sees it is we generally don't see cops like you. We see cops that sometimes they may have a short fuse, they may not be in the best of moods, and that quickly escalates situations. Am I saying something that's inaccurate, or do you see it differently?
No, you're absolutely right. And unfortunately, that's true with every police department. Now, do you have cops that do have a short fuse, that bring their insecurity, okay, to the job? Yes, you do. But as a whole, you know, I tend to believe that the police do come out and legitimately try to do the right thing. Again, training is key. Sensitivity training is key. Understanding the different cultural backgrounds and adapting to those to address any type of situation is key. I mean, I've been retired for 4 years. I still conduct investigations in Mount Vernon, and I speak for myself. I can go right now into the south side of Mount Vernon, okay, where it's 99% African American, and the people there will greet me with open arms. And that's resulting to a reputation that we've established as a police department as a whole, okay, for some of the police officers to be able to do that.
You've done training for this, and I'm curious, in Missouri right now, in Ferguson, one of the things is 2/3 of the town, if not a little more, is black. Police force, overwhelmingly, I think more than 90% white. Is there a merit that the people of the force should look like the people that they're policing?
Yes and no. Yes, absolutely. The police force should be just as diverse as the jurisdiction, okay, that they are serving. As far as residency goes, I'm a proponent for qualifications. I don't believe that residency should be put in front of a qualified individual, regardless of your background, ethnicity, or race.
What has to happen if you're walking in and they say, all right, George, tell us what we got to do? I know you said training is important, but what's the first thing that's going to tell you got a problem on this police force if you're looking at it and you're going to give them advice on what they got to do different?
I think it helps you, okay, to establish a rapport. It helps you to establish a relationship, okay? And not just to address a volatile situation that we're seeing in Ferguson and in Staten Island, but overall, from an investigator's perspective. Key point is, I think you have to understand and respect cultural differences, and you can better assess any type of a situation.
Well, Detective, I certainly appreciate a few minutes with you, and I have a feeling we're going to be talking again here while the situation plays out, both in Richmond County and Staten Island, and obviously out in the Midwest as well. George Ossipo, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Sir, thank you so much.
Now,
it's a pleasure to meet you.
Pat Lynch, the president of the Patrolmen's Benevolent Association, the PBA, he's been very vocal about the Garner case, and Dominic sat down with Pat to get his take on the case.
Thank you very much for joining us tonight, Mr. Lynch.
It's a pleasure, Dominic.
How can you defend this?
First off, no police officer goes to work in the beginning of their tour wanting to or expecting to deal with the death of someone in their custody. It's not what we do. But unfortunately in this business, sometimes these tragic things happen. This is a tragedy for the family. It's a tragedy for the police officers as well that have to live with this tragedy along with that family. These police officers are going out to do a job. And we're hearing now a lot of things, what you shouldn't do, what you can't do. But no one's saying what we should do. What should you do when you have someone that's not complying, that says, I'm not going to be placed under arrest? A police officer does not have the option just to walk away. Nor would the citizens want us to walk away. We were on that corner that day because the merchants and the community complained to the police department, and the police department sends the police officers there to correct that chronic problem. So every time someone says, well, I'm not going, leave me alone, we don't have that option to walk away.
Well, how do you feel in this case the officers should be disciplined?
These police officers were sent there. And all we ever ask with any case is that we get fairness and allow the investigation to move forward. Police officers deserve the benefit of the doubt, and they deserve a fair review just like everyone else. That's all we ask in this case. When we come to the end of that investigation, then there should be a decision if there's discipline or not. From what I see at this point, these police officers went there. I don't believe that was a chokehold. You had police officers that needed to bring this person down to the ground to place him under arrest. He decided to struggle and fight instead. They did what they were trained to do, bring them to the ground, handcuff them. You also watched when he said he could not breathe. They turned him on his side. Textbook of what you should do when somebody says, I can't breathe. So these police officers are doing the best they can. If you also look at the videotape, while folks are taking it and chopping it and doing it frame by frame, when you watch it in real time, we're talking about 8 seconds. I believe after the review, after the results, we should decide what was done right and what was done wrong. But the benefit of the doubt should always go to that police officer.
Okay, but wait a minute, Mr. Lynch. You're saying, as the president of the PBA, and the entire world basically has seen the videotape, you do not believe, for the record, even though the mayor, even though the police commissioner, Bratton, has indicated that it was a chokehold, which is illegal under police department procedures. You believe it was not a chokehold?
I believe it was not a chokehold. I believe they were taking a person down to the ground. When they got them to the ground, there was a struggle to handcuff. The police officers went there and had a discussion with him and said, we're going to be placing you under arrest. We've been here before. We know how this goes, basically. And he chose to say, I'm not going. I'm not going to be placed under arrest. They took out their handcuffs and they immediately went for his hands, to put the hands behind their back and place him under arrest. He decided that was not going to happen. The police officer's only option then is to bring him to the ground, to place him under arrest.
By grabbing his neck and putting him in a hold?
A large man being brought down to the ground, to the sidewalk, to put the hands behind the back. Unfortunately, tragedies happen. When we use force like that, it's never nice to watch. But unfortunately, we have no other options except to go hands-on when someone says we're not going to be placed under arrest. There's thousands and thousands of interactions with the public every day by New York City police officers. People being placed under arrest comply, put their hands behind their back, be brought to the station house, and then it's in the court's hands. That happens thousands of times every single day.
All right, well, I want you to head to both Facebook and Twitter. Sound off on our question tonight. We got a lot of great responses all week long on the phone lines and online. So join the conversation. Race in police. We want to get your perspectives. If you're a member of law enforcement or have a loved one on the force here, give your perspectives to what we've seen play out in both Staten Island and Missouri, or if you've been on the receiving end of it and you don't believe that justice is necessarily meted out fairly, let us know. And you can do so as you see on those addresses on your screen. And Dominic, we've got a lot of perspectives on this. We're going to get another perspective on the other side of the family, really the ones that in many ways matter most, those who no longer have a loved one after the incident.
Indeed, that's the case, Richard. We just heard one perspective, the police side, from the PBA president. But we're going to take a break, as Richard indicated, and when we come back, we will tonight hear the other side when we go one-on-one with the loved ones of Eric Garner.